This podcast series includes discussions about ketamine use and the potential harms associated with it. Our goal is to provide balanced, evidence-based information to help listeners better understand ketamine and its impact. If you or someone you know is affected by ketamine, please check the podcast feed for further advice and resources.
In our final episode, we'll be exploring how we can respond to ketamine beyond harm reduction, exploring good practice and the wider debates around ketamine use.
In 2025, access to substances like ketamine has never been easier. With the rise of social media, encrypted messaging apps, online marketplaces and QR codes placed on lampposts and notice boards, getting hold of drugs is often just a few taps away. Young people and adults alike are using platforms like Snapchat, Telegram, Instagram and a range of new platforms to buy substances. And however someone buys substances, we need to remember that purity and potency will always be a complete gamble. You never know what you are getting. And here's the challenge. Many professionals and parents don't understand just how accessible ketamine has become. There's still a belief that drug use only happens in certain spaces, with certain people. But that's just not the reality anymore. If we ignore these shifts, we risk missing the signs of use, dismissing important conversations, and increasing harm. We need to take time to understand how drugs are being accessed today. It's no longer just about street deals. It's about anonymous payments, discreet deliveries, and direct messages. The following interviews are from people currently in recovery at the Birchwood Kaleidoscope House.
It's probably the easiest thing to get hold of. I can get ket for, I can get weed or something in London. Like, it's cheap as hell. You can get like 50 grams for like £250, so it's costing pennies basically for it. You can do large amounts of it, and it's just more or less the thing that everyone's doing. And realistically, I could go through my phone, text anyone, and within seconds I could probably have it. And it's just kind of scary because like most other drugs aren't as like I can't get them as quickly. Like if I wanted MD or this or that, but with ketamine, it was always rapid. Like there's always someone here, someone there that would have it, and it's just cheap, isn't it? Like when you're young, especially, you don't have all the money in the world and you want to do drugs 24/7. I couldn't have ever kept up a coke addiction, but with the care, like people can buy it with their like pocket money allowances in schools and stuff. It's that cheap, and it's like no other drug's really been that cheap. So it's just what's stuck there, and
Yeah, it's loads. It's so much easier to get hold of now. The price has gone down. The weights have gone up. Obviously, it's not. I don't believe that it's like proper ketamine how it was. Like even maybe when I started taking it 12 years ago, there were people saying that the ketamine had changed a lot and it was getting worse. And now I sort of understand what they mean because the ketamine that you take now, it's cut with so many different things now. Nitazene, fentanyl. But there's quite a lot of different things now that they can add to it to put the weights up. It's the phone's a huge problem, especially like Snapchat, these messaging sites, social media sites where messages are deleted straight away. So people can like sell drugs on there and sort of send pictures of their videos of their drugs out and stuff like that. I mean, to a drug addict, when you're addicted to a drug, the worst thing that you can do is dangle a bag of drugs in front of somebody's face, and they're doing that through the phones. So it's scary because the kids, the youngest child that I know is a 12-year-old doing it.
And I got in with a bit of a. There were lads that I knew that that they'd sold ketamine quite big time. And the truth be known, there was a lad that I got to know of, and I actually sold drugs for him in clubs. So he were paying bouncers. I were going into nightclubs. I were picking a bag up on a Friday night, like a satchel on a Friday night with could have 500 pills in it. It'd have like 40 gram of coke in it. Half ounce of ketamine. It's all weighed out for me, all in bags, all weighed out, ready to go. 3 pills in a bag for a tenner. Used to go into nightclubs with the personal bags that you put down. You put tablets in. Used to have a personal bag full of drugs there, just to be top button, undo my top button, my jeans, put it down my front. Now we're going into nightclubs and pubs and nightclubs and stuff, all paid for by the bouncers. The lad who I was selling for were paying the bouncers, so just be straight to the front of the queue, straight through, and left alone, basically.
It's socially acceptable, ketamine. It's not seen as it's class B. It's not seen as a life-threatening drug. Sniffer dogs used by police and festival security cannot detect ketamine because I have passed through myself carrying ketamine. I know that the police cannot test for ketamine at the roadside. I have been in the company of someone that has taken ketamine whilst driving and been tested.
So, can police test for ketamine on the roadside if you're suspected of drug driving? The short answer is no. UK road tests only detect established substances such as cannabis and cocaine. But if you're impaired, they can do a field test and then take you to the station for further drug screening, where ketamine will show up.
The accessibility of it is, I know the price has dropped, and I was working this out last night. Since 2017, when I started using ketamine, the price has dropped from 70 to 75% to the kilo, and that's dangerous figures.
This is James Mawhinney, the Senior Social Worker and Strategic Safeguarding Lead for Change Grow Live St Helens.
What we've seen, during COVID, when they weren't able to, leave the house at certain periods, they weren't able to go to shops and buy alcohol when they were, hanging around with the friends and stuff. But what they could do was get a drug dealer to come and drop drugs off at the property. So we've seen a change at that point where they were starting to use things like just oxide, etc. And being able to get drugs delivered to them, and then that's where ketamine started to appear on the scene. Our young people are very, very connected. So even what you again, it's sort of a change in trend where you go back to years ago, maybe when we were younger. You had a group of mates, and that group of mates interacted with each other only. What you see now with our young people is that they interact with people across the whole of St Helens. So they're interacting with people across the whole borough. They're all friends on things like Snapchat and Instagram. And so everybody knows everybody, everybody's connected to everybody. And so with things like substance use, etc., obviously word spreads very, very fast around new and different drugs that are on the scene. Or if obviously we've also got drug dealers who are using things like Snapchat and Instagram, etc., to target young people. And with things like Snapchat, which is probably the most common form of it being used, I'd say, in my opinion, to drug deal, is you don't even have to be a friend of somebody to access to be added into you can be added via a friend of a friend kind of thing. So it very quickly gives you access to a large population where drug dealers can reach out and target a lot of different young people. What I'm also seeing is that when I'm giving messages around harm reduction to some of the young people I work with, that very quickly is spreading around as well. So I'll meet other young people who are not in treatment, etc., and they are already hearing it from the friend, which is a total positive thing. What the trend that I'm seeing locally is that these are not it's not your typical drug dealer. They are also using the substance themselves. So we've got, street level dealing going on where they're also using ketamine. They're typically drug dealing to fund their own habit, which means that, like, the drug dealing to the mates for the start, that means that prices vary all the time. So it can depend on how close they are to the person. It can depend on how much stuff they've got. It can depend on how much money they want to make for themselves. So prices fluctuate. We've also, because it's so flooded on the streets right now, prices have plummeted significantly. So it's not a case of being able to find it difficult to source ketamine. You can get it from multiple different sources at multiple different times, and again, obviously, that drives price down. It's becoming the go-to drug for people to first start using. So whereas that used to be things like cannabis, people are now starting to use that for the first substance.
Ketamine can form a strong psychological dependency in people who use regularly. Frequent use can also cause physical pain and damage to the body, which creates a physical dependency on the substance to take the pain away. Many people who hit this level need further help, and this is why the Birchwood Treatment Centre is vital for those that use. This is Joe Moore, the registered manager at the Birchwood Kaleidoscope House.
So for our detoxes with ketamine, we use benzodiazepines. So that may be a low-dose regime of diazepam, or for people with impaired liver or kidney function, we will use lorazepam. It seems to be safer around the organs at that point with the metabolism of the benzos. People use buscopan. We use things like codamol, codeine, oromorph. It's a titration where we want to reduce the analgesics over a period of 2 to 3 weeks. We don't want them to then become dependent. But if there's nerve damage, we will use pregabalin, and we'll use things like sulfenacin, mirabegron, and those will help with the frequency of urination with the bladder and the inflammation. You can also use anti-inflammatories, naproxen. We'll use things like amitriptyline, duloxetine as well, and those will make the patient comfortable during their stay. So it's a trial and error. It's seeing how they feel with its frequency of assessment of their withdrawals and clinical observations. And then we'll deal with things like the blood testing with microbiology, and we may need to look at liver and kidney functions during their stay. For detox of ketamine, we say that the person will need 2 to 4 weeks in treatment just for the detox element. What we're finding is that somebody also then needs to go onto the rehabilitation stage. So that's 12 weeks, and that can be as long as 6 months as well. So we would look at how far their body is deteriorated, along with their mental health concerns, to see whether the rehab was essential as part of their package of treatment. What I want people to understand is we've looked after heroin users for 20, 30 years. And I've worked in this field for 24 years, and I've never seen such an impact on the body in such a short space of time than I have with ketamine. And the heroin users, they're shocked at how vast and fast that their peers within their recovery setting, how unwell they are, how malnourished they look, how damaged their bodies are on a permanent basis. But if I look at the last 33 people that came through our treatment service, only 2 self-discharged from service, and those 2 came back for further treatment. So we didn't just ask them to go and that was it. We worked with them, we encouraged them, they wanted the help, and they came back to our service. So everybody completed their detox. They may have had a blip during the way, but primarily people can get better. So if they access treatment early, they can get that support in place, and there will be less damage to their body on a permanent basis. We've got loads of people that have been through our service, and one of them is coming back to work here as a staff member. So he's 11 months clean from ketamine. He's been working in social media to help other people and to inspire people that life can change. and you can get on with some kind of normality. It may never be the same again, but I don't think anyone that comes out of addiction that life will ever be the same. They have to change everything. So he will be focusing on supporting families and our ketamine service users within his new role. And, we've got lots of young women and men that come through that tell their stories and promote, the importance about that fast access to treatment and that recovery is possible in the end. So our new family support group is called A Bag for Life. So there's 3 meanings to that, and it's a harsh reality. So we've got a bag of ketamine, we've got a nephrostomy or ileostomy bag. So the logo is actually a nephrostomy bag in place of the bladder. And then we've got a bag for life as in a body bag, because if we don't get that help and support quickly, people will not survive. And there are people within the UK now who are not making it.
The following interviews are from people currently in recovery at the Birchwood at Kaleidoscope House.
And here it's like, first, like, you see an experience from people that have done rehab at my age, and then they're back 40, 50, repeating themselves. I'm hearing people my own age, relating with people my own age, hearing shares from people that have been literally in my shoes, and my health's just come back. Like, I'm in a place where I'm focused not on quitting the drugs fully, but focused on why I take the drugs, why, like, what root problem, because at the end of the day, the drugs was never the problem. I was the problem to the drugs. And now I'm like, I understand who I am, why I do things more, got my health back, I can talk to family, I've got all these things I've never really had. And yeah, it's made me into a new person, and it's brilliant, to be fair.
For me, there wouldn't have been an option for me, sorry, because there was no rehab or detox within their framework that dealt with ketamine. So what they should be allowed to do is depending on people's cases, should be able to, like, look outside of their framework and look for something more sort of to the user's needs. So, like, for example, if my mum wouldn't have had a car, like, it would have been very, very difficult for us to get here. So I probably would have had to turn this help down, which probably would have ended my life from something so simple. But if they would look outside their framework, then maybe they'd find something that would be better to the user's needs. I can't believe I've been here in 4 months, and the amount of people that I've seen come in here for ketamine and the states that they've come in, it's going to get worse. So they need to be prepared. They really do.
Quite anxious, really, because I know how accessible it is. It's everywhere, really. Every social event that I'm going to go for the rest of my life, there's potential that it's going to be in my company. And I've come to terms with the fact that I am going to be an addict for the rest of my life, and it will be just working on myself to keep myself straight. But I do have hope. But yeah, just anxious, really.
Now let's talk about the UK government's proposal to make ketamine a Class A drug. On the one side, there's concern over rising use, particularly amongst young people, and the serious physical damage seen in heavy users. Reclassifying it could therefore send a strong message and increase penalties for drug supply. But here's the problem. History tells us that criminalisation alone doesn't stop drug use. In fact, it often pushes it further underground, making it harder for users to access harm reduction services. And ketamine isn't just a recreational drug. It has legitimate medical uses. It's been used as anaesthetic for decades, as has been mentioned previously, and in recent years, research has shown it's been hugely beneficial for treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, and chronic pain. So instead of demonising ketamine, we need to talk about the bigger picture. Some people use it dependently, yes, that's true, but others use it recreationally and will never develop a dependency on it. And remember from the previous episode, harm reduction doesn't mean endorsing its use, it means recognising realities, understanding the risks and making sure people have access to safety and support. At the end of the day, criminalisation, education and harm reduction all need to be part of the conversation. Because if we're serious about reducing harm, we need evidence-based strategies, not just reactionary policies. One example is through Change Grow Live's approach, both locally and nationally, to adopting their support and treatment pathways to recognise the emerging challenges of ketamine use.
This is Lisa Buckley, the National Lead for Detox and Rehab with CGL.
Know that caseloads are very often high for people. Thankfully, we had the new drug strategy that came along about 3 years ago, and we've had more investment that was needed into services. And the idea of that was to reduce caseloads for people. We're not necessarily seeing that because other things have impacted. And, the latest one is the national insurance, for example. And recruitment is difficult. It's got better. And, I saw it myself during the pandemic. They called it the mass resignation, didn't they? Where people had got used to working from home and suddenly they decided they wanted to carry on doing that. And that's fair enough. People reassessed their priorities, didn't they? And some people voted with their feet and decided to move on. As a result of that initial investment, we have seen a real increase in the workforce. A lot of those people don't come from working in drug and alcohol backgrounds, but we've got a really good training program. But at the same time, you have to accept that when people are really busy, people's ability to absorb new information with competing priorities can be a challenge. So it's making sure that when we're working with people and we're asking more of people and it can feel like that, oh, another thing, it's making sure that we do it in the right way, that we're compassionate with people when we do that, and we think about what's realistic. So, for example, do you have leads on ketamine who take the lead on ketamine within the service? And it's always quite useful whether you've got, I'm old school, so going back to the old days, we used to have lead needle exchange workers, for example. And while it's not always great that all the knowledge sits with one person, but they can disseminate that information and they're a go-to person as well. And they can kind of guide people within the service who haven't always got the time and the headspace to kind of take on something else, but might need just a quick conversation when somebody comes in. And I'm a big advocate of having leads because it gives that kind of responsibility and which you need sometimes if somebody picks up the mantle and I'm leading on this, rather than you water it down across the service and then you haven't got anybody who's got the time to kind of become the expert on it, so to speak. But what we really need is fast access to treatment for anybody using ketamine. So it is, if there's wait times, for people to be assessed, there has to be a fast track process for high risk people and also people who are using ketamine as well, particularly if they're presenting, and you won't know that until you've assessed them, but if they're really struggling with some physical health issues, it's about getting people either before those physical health issues start presenting themselves, or if they're experiencing that, it's about getting them in quickly. There's good capacity within the system in terms of inpatient units. With our national framework, we also have wait times on our website as well. So we know where the capacity is to get people through. And my experience on the West Midlands framework is that people who come through as urgent, we will try our best to get them in as soon as we can.
This is Peter Furlong, the National Harm Reduction Lead for Change Grow Live.
We've started with thinking about tools and resources for our staff teams, so we've started sharing information on our internal internet about ketamine and information about how to maybe get that core advice out there. We're looking at training, sort of doing a learning needs analysis at the moment. What training and aimed at what level of staff team, be it our CYP services, young people and young adults, through to our adult services. So we're looking at that. We've sort of, in terms of our national framework for detox and rehab, we've added a couple of options on there that specialise in ketamine detoxes and rehab options. We're looking broader. Some of our services have established really good practice in terms of those pathways into mainstream services and education pieces with the wider stakeholder group, looking at things like modern slavery and all sorts of things really that can affect, vulnerable people who may be subject to getting using ketamine. So quite a wide, it's really at the top of our priorities at the moment about making sure that we've got the right level of advice. And as you said earlier, without sort of, sensationalizing it, accepting it for what it is, it's still relatively low use in terms of you look at how much alcohol, cannabis, ecstasy is used by the younger people who use our services. So still in the lower quartiles of use. So keeping that in mind, but making sure that we're looking ahead really and looking for how things can develop. Some of our services are more sort of ahead of the game than others, and that's because in their area this isn't a new thing. It's been building over time. St Helens is one example of that, and they've found examples of where younger vulnerable people being used in the county lines, sort of where ketamine can be used as a reward, as an enticement. So yeah, I think it is showing itself in them ways, but it's about, as you say, sharing that information with the relevant people. It's definitely a partnership approach when you think of it that way. That is going to work. Drug and alcohol services can't deal with this on their own. This is definitely the need to pull in all stakeholders, from police partners, to adult safeguarding, children safeguarding, social services, everyone really, and get them involved in the conversation.
This is Jack Randles from the Birchwood.
I think your average person doesn't understand how much of issue it is physically. I think they might think these people are like poly drug users who like to party kind of thing, and they're always out doing just mixing drugs up and stuff. But I think it needs to be taken more seriously from a health perspective. And maybe it isn't. Maybe it's people don't outreach. People think, oh, well, you can just kind of tell them if they get the rest of their life together, stop doing these certain behaviours, they'll stop. They can avoid the ketamine. But really, people don't realise how much of it becomes your whole life. I think that's what I've heard from people anyway when they've been in here. Like I think people are going to social work not having a more special experience of seeing how intense it can be. From from specifically a ketamine perspective, mandatory kind of education on the physical health effects that can come from long-term drug addiction, how it can be mitigated, where you could refer them to. I suppose there's agencies in between a social worker and then they go to somewhere else and they try and get them in somewhere like this. But I think if we could be more of a framework that could be provided to social workers to kind of cut out the middleman and get people to the right place as soon as they could get there, I think it would help people not get into such a bad health situation.
So, what can you do about the ketamine debate? If someone trusts you enough to talk about their use, listen without judgment. The more we shut down conversations with fear and moral panic, the less people are likely to reach out when they need that help. Know the risks, but also the realities. Ketamine use carries dangers, especially with high doses or frequent use, bladder damage, dissociation, and riskier behaviour. But the vast majority of people who use ketamine will never experience long-term physical harm or develop addiction. Understanding both sides helps us respond with balance and care.
I'd like to see less young people being devastated by the physical impacts and mental health impacts that ketamine use is causing, because they've been able to get quick access to the treatment that they deserve, really.
I think it's finding those platforms where if people aren't going to cross our threshold in terms of drug and alcohol services, taking the message out to them.
So developing your own ketamine partnership would be really significant and really key to making sure that we provide the best service for our young adults or our adults using ketamine.
This is so new that we're really learning on the job.
I always saw it as kind of a party drug, it's a big thing up in Liverpool. Like, I know teenage kids who do it all the time. Like, I know when I was growing up, it was a thing that people did all the time, like, and it's not seen by the younger generation as an addictive thing culturally, I don't think.
I can't emphasize it enough, just everyone from school teachers to parents to doctors, nurses, police, everyone needs to really focus on what is happening right now.
I want to join a gym. I want to attend as many classes as I possibly can. I want to really engage with my son. I want to take him out as much as I can. I want to see as much as I possibly can with him.
If I came here in November, and if I hadn't have come here on the 4th of November, I would have been dead by Christmas.
But basically, I just want to work, be around my family. I just had a baby sister who's 9 months old, just being there. How I haven't been in most of my life, to be fair. And just like having a second chance at life that not many people get.
This has been Frontline, a Risk and Resilience production. We want to take this moment to thank our amazing guests, Joe Moore and Jack Randles from Birchwood Inpatient Unit, Peter Furlong, Lisa Buckley and James Mawhinney from Change, Grow, Live, and most importantly, to the people from Birchwood who have shared their stories about their use.
If you want to know more about this subject, or you're concerned about someone's ketamine use, check out the information in the podcast feed. Stay tuned to our up-and-coming deep dive podcasts, and drop us an email if you have a story to tell or wish to be involved in future podcasts. Thank you.